What's going on, guys? Dawkbro back again. Hope you're fantastic today, and welcome back to another Fazbear Frights story, where we are doing the last story of the puppet carver, which is Pizza Kit. Okay? And obviously the epilogue at the end of the story to do with the stitch wraith and everything. So yeah, we're going to talk about that at the end of the video too, which is also very interesting. Okay, Pizza Kit. First off, did I like it or not? I thought it was okay. I actually liked the plot of it. I thought it was interesting. I like how Freddy Fazbear have got their own Pizza Kit factory, which is really cool. Kind of like the Security Breach Mall. It's like a big thing, right? It's not just a little pizzeria. They've got their own factory, which I thought was really cool. And it had a lot of filler in it. It had a lot of filler in this story that I wasn't really interested in. That's just me being honest. Not every story needs to have action like that. I bet some of you guys really liked Pizza Kit. The ending has a twist. There's some twists in this one, and yeah, it's all in the head. This one is, guys. It's basically all in the head. Kind of like 1:35 a.m. Probably a bit less than that, because 1:35 a.m. you get like the doll, but in this one, nothing really physical is there. It's always in the main protagonist's mind, overthinking things because of guilt and stuff. There's not really anything to theorize after the story. You know how sometimes they're like, oh my god, maybe it's Golden Freddy. This is kind of just like a story where we go, oh, it's just all in imagination. There are two main protagonists. The main protagonist is called Peyton, and she has a best friend called Marley. Okay, so Peyton's the main character, Marley's her best friend. They're both in school studying home economics, and they're in there basically to get a good grade. It's easy to get a grade A, apparently. Home economics, it's called food tech in the UK. If you're from the UK, home economics is all about food, cooking good. And Peyton and Marley talk about the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Kit, and apparently right now it's all the rage, even with the high schoolers, because of nostalgia. Kind of like with Pokemon. How I'm like 20-something with Pokemon cards. It's nostalgic. That's how it is in the FNAF universe, guys. Freddy Fazbear is very nostalgic to a lot of people. And the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Kit is the new thing at the moment. And what you do, guys, it's not like the Chuck E. Cheese machine that I had, that I did a video on. It's a full factory. I don't know if you've got it in America, but you can go... Can you go to a Hershey's factory and make your own chocolate and stuff? You can do that here in the UK with Cadbury's. You can go to the factory and you can make your own chocolate and stuff. It's kind of like that, but it's a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Factory, where you go to the factory and you order your own pizza. You pick your toppings and stuff, and it gets delivered to your house. I don't know how people thought that was exciting. Going to a factory to order a pizza. Maybe they have like entertainment and stuff there. It doesn't really say in the book, but you could just go to freaking Domino's or Pizza Hut and just order a pizza. Maybe it's because it's like the whole big factory, like Willy Wonka's factory, to make your own pizza. But it's not real anyway, but I think I'm getting a bit too critical about it. And Mrs. Crutchfield, the teacher of home economics, tells them that the whole class will be going next week for a visit, because home economics is about food and stuff, so they're going to learn about how the factory runs and everything like that, and do a bit of education about it. There is a problem between Peyton and Marley. Okay, so Peyton's mom says that Marley can be very controlling and has a strong personality. So let's say the two of them are together. Marley says, oh, let's pull a prank on the teacher. And Peyton would be like, no, I don't want to do it. But Marley will convince her slowly to do it. Say, oh, come on, don't be boring. You're so boring. And then Peyton finally says, okay. That's just an example, but that's what Marley's like. And Marley always causes drama and stuff. So Marley's a troublemaker. And Marley doesn't really treat Peyton in a nasty way. She's not like a bully. It's not like Mean Girls or something like that. If you watch Mean Girls, Marley's just, just a bad influence sometimes. And this is an example. Marley calls up Peyton saying, do you want to go out? Come on, let's go out. But Peyton doesn't want to, because she's going to be, get home late and not finish her homework and stuff like that. But Marley convinces her to go out, and then she gets in trouble with her mom. And, it's teasing that something's going to happen, right? Marley keeps convincing Peyton in the story to do things, and it causes consequences. When she's walking home late, she's got a next door neighbor called Abigail. It was her old friend, and basically Peyton ditched her for Marley, for the popular girls at school. And Peyton's mom uses that as an argument, saying Abigail is so much better than Marley. You know, Marley's a bad influence. I'm warning you, like, you need to relax a bit. But obviously Peyton doesn't listen. I'm not a baby anymore. I'm an adult. So let's see what happens, shall we? Like I said, guys, there's a lot of filler in this, so I'm just, I'm briefly talking about the filler. It's field trip time, guys, and they go around the factory for this. They go around the factory for the special tour at the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Kit factory. Now, already, the sign that something bad's going to happen is Marley. So when they're on the bus, Marley says that Freddy Fazbear's for babies and the pizza tastes like crap. And, Marley's not a fan of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, okay? Which is already an indicator that something's going to happen in the factory to me. I wrote that down. It even says that factories are dangerous if you don't follow the rules. And that was the point where I was like, yeah, something's going to happen with both of them. Marley's going to, convince Peyton to do something, and something bad's going to happen in the factory. We get introduced by somebody dressed as Chica at the pizza factory, which I thought was cool. And she basically gives them the rules, stick together, don't split up, follow the rules. Here's a card. So you get given a card, guys, with a checklist. So on the checklist, you go around the factory and you're like, I want pickles, I want tomato sauce, I want pineapple, I want anchovies. And then you give them your card, and then your pizza gets delivered, which I thought it's a pretty cool idea. So they go around the factory, guys, and it's a massive factory with different rooms, different machines doing things, making the dough, stuff like that. A massive steam room, like a hot room with tomato vats, boiling the tomato sauce and stuff like that. It's a big facility. And while they're touring the factory, guys, what do you think happens? Marley goes to Peyton. Psst, come on, let's sneak off. This tour is boring. So, and Peyton obviously is like, no, we've been told to stick together. The factory's dangerous. We shouldn't be going around on our own. Marley, being Marley, very controlling, basically calls Peyton boring. Why are you always so boring for? And then Peyton eventually agrees to go. They make their way up some metal railings and go into the vat room where the tomato sauce is, guys. The boiling tomato sauce. Peyton followed Marley up the rickety-seeming metal stairs, trying not to look down at her feet. Steam from the vats on the production line was rising, making it look like they were walking into a cloud. They stood together on the narrow catwalk. Marley was energetic and laughing, but Peyton didn't like being here. The railings didn't seem high enough to be safe, and a sign reading "Fall Warning" showed a stick man plummeting to his doom. It was unnerving. Can we go back down now? Peyton asked. As was always the case when she was in a high place, her feet tingled and her stomach felt like it had migrated to the back of her throat. She's scared of heights. She's on this big catwalk above the vats. Not yet, Marley said. It's cool up here. All this steam makes it look like a horror movie where a monster comes out of the fog and Marley lunged towards Peyton, grabs you. Peyton felt like her heart was going to thud out of her chest. She took a deep breath and tried to get a hold of herself. Stop! You can't startle me like that, not up here. Marley looked up at her, then grinned. Hey, you're really scared, aren't you? I don't like heights. Don't you remember how I wouldn't go on the Ferris wheel with you at the fair? She had intended to go on the ride and had even stood in line with Marley, but had chickened out at the last minute. That's right. You stayed on the ground and just waved at me, Marley said. Well, there's no reason to be scared up here. I'm sure this factory has safety regulations. I'm sure it's safe to run. She did a quick sprint down the catwalk and then ran back to where Peyton was standing, or jump up and down. As Marley jumped, Peyton could feel the catwalk give way a little. It made a horrible creaking sound. she grabbed onto the railing, afraid she might be sick. Marley, please stop! Could I say it like that? Marley laughed. Why should I stop just because you're scared? I'm having an awesome time, and I'm sure everything's super safe. She looked at a sign reading, "Don't lean on the railings." I bet that's even safe. She leaned her back against one railing and then propelled herself forward to lean into one of the opposite sides of the walkway. The railing wasn't safe. Marley plunged forward and down, disappearing into the rising steam. Peyton screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the whirring and grinding of the machinery below. So guys, Marley convinces Peyton to go up to the vats and sneak off. Marley, being an idiot, starts running up and down the railings, thinking that she's the best and, you know, she's indestructible. Unfortunately, guys, the railing collapses and she falls down, okay? We don't know if she died. We don't know. This is exactly how Peyton reacted. She's in shock. She actually thinks that Marley fell into one of the boiling vats and got boiled alive. And there's no way that she would ever survive that, falling into a boiling vat of tomato sauce. And while these thoughts are going through Peyton's head, she really thinks that one of the vats is making a sloshing sound, like something's jamming the stirrer. But when she stopped, but then it suddenly stops. So she even says, is it in her imagination? And that was the first time I thought, oh, okay. This is where Peyton is starting to hallucinate things already and starting to imagine things to do with Marley's death. And this is where Peyton literally goes into shock at this point, overthinks everything. What if people think that Peyton pushed Marley off the railing to kill her? Because those were the only two people in that room, so nobody would know. Rumours would spread. She'd go into prison, you know. Unfortunately, Peyton makes the silly decision into going back to her classmates and not saying a single thing about what happened. She thinks it's better to just forget what happened and just avoid everything. And even Mrs. Crutchfield asks Peyton where Marley is, and she lies, and she said that they got separated and maybe Marley went home because she said that the tour was boring. So already, this is a bad sign for things to come, because Peyton is lying. She's lied about the situation. She could have easily just said that Marley fell, and that's the end of it. And then the people could have went and looked for her, but she doesn't do that. She lies and says that Marley went home. And when they get home, Marley's mom has actually called Peyton's mom, asking if she knows where Marley is. And unfortunately, again, Peyton lies to Marley's mom, saying, oh, I was with her at the factory, and then she said that she was bored and she went home. So everybody's starting to worry about Marley now. And Peyton knows what happened, but she's not budging. She's not telling them what happened. And she even lies to her own mom. Peyton's mom literally asks what's going on, and she keeps the lie going. She isn't declared missing yet, because apparently it wasn't long enough to be declared missing. And Peyton's just thinking like, oh, maybe she did survive, maybe everything's fine, maybe she's still there. But Peyton just keeps overthinking things and panicking. I would too, if I was lying about something like that and everybody else was getting upset, but I knew what actually happened. It's not something to be going through. She goes outside for some fresh air because she's starting to panic again. But she meets with Abigail again, her neighbour friend who she ditched. And Abigail tells Peyton that rumours are starting to spread around high school. That apparently Marley screamed before she fell. Like a high school rumour, things like that it's cursed and stuff like that. So this obviously makes Peyton panic even more and overthinks things like, wait, because these rumours are spreading and Peyton knows what happened, she starts like overthinking things like, did she scream? I can't remember if she screamed. What if she did scream and stuff like that? Peyton apologises to Abigail and they become friends again. A bit of filler. It doesn't do anything to the plot. It just shows that it's just an indication that Peyton is now becoming more and more guilty. Okay? And guilt with what's happened is not going to go well with Peyton's mind, okay? Especially in the FNAF universe, the brain, she's going to start hallucinating things. And she goes back home. Like I said, Peyton's guilt starts to become worse and worse. She's not eating properly. She can't eat anything, and she goes to bed. Now, we actually get a really cool scene of a dream sequence, guys, when she goes to sleep. Again, this is a dream. It doesn't happen. Like I said, it's all to do with dreams and hallucinations and imagination. But I thought this was a really cool scene for a dream. We get a scene with Freddy Fazbear, which I thought I'd read to you guys. It's some nice scenery. Well, it's very gruesome scenery, but it's cool for a horror story. Again, guys, this is a dream. This doesn't happen. She was surrounded by the whirring and churning of machinery. She looked around and saw she was in Freddy Fazbear's pizza kit factory. She was alone. She had gotten separated from her group, and she needed to find them. She entered a dimly lit room where vats of tomato sauce gurgled as they bubbled and boiled. She looked around frantically for any sign of her classmates or teacher. There was no one. On the floor in front of the vats was a big black pot like a witch's cauldron. It was hanging over an open fire that had been built with some logs. An open fire inside a building? Peyton thought. How is that even safe? A familiar figure from Peyton's early childhood walked out and took his place behind the cauldron. It was a big, furry Freddy Fazbear with his tiny top hat and familiar grin. Freddy was carrying a big burlap bag, the kind that Christmas cards always showed Santa carrying. Humming to himself, Freddy reached into his bag and pulled out a long-handled wooden spoon. He dipped the spoon into the cauldron of sauce and then stirred. He dipped into the bag and pulled out a foot next. A girl's foot, small, with the toenails painted baby pink. He dropped it too into the bubbling cauldron. Horror was building in Peyton. Horror, but also comprehension. She was terrified of what he was going to pull out next, but she couldn't look away. Freddy reached into the bag one more time and retrieved a severed head that he held by its luxurious blonde hair. At first, Peyton couldn't see the face, but as Freddy turned the head around, she saw it was Marley. Her eyes wide and unseeing, her mouth open in a silent scream. Freddy let go of the hair, and the head landed in the cauldron of sauce with a splash. So there you go, guys. Pretty horrific that she had a dream of Freddy Fazbear holding her best friend's head and making tomato sauce with it. So I just thought I'd read that because I thought it was, pretty horrific scenery. Goosebump vibes. Freddy Fazbear making tomato sauce with human heads. There you go. So obviously this dream has traumatized Peyton, guys, because that dream's pretty horrific to dream about. And the school gossip is going around again. More rumours spreading about Marley, what happened to her. And when she's at school, the police officer's there with her mom. Okay? The police officer's there with Peyton's mom at the school office. And she gets interviewed by a policeman. Interviewed. So this is pretty serious, guys, because apparently, according to everybody, Peyton was the last person that Marley saw. So obviously she's going to get interviewed by the police. And she lies again. She lies again to a police officer about what happened. And her story now isn't adding up. Even the policeman is getting suspicious of what the story, what happened. It's not adding up at all. But the police officer writes some notes down because he's suspicious. Even Peyton thinks he's writing more stuff down than what she said, indicating that the policeman doesn't believe what she's saying. And she leaves, and her mom says, I'm proud of you for telling the truth. And obviously Peyton isn't telling the truth. So again, this builds up more pressure with Peyton about what's happening, and it's gonna overload at some point. It's the next day after the Freddy Fazbear factory incident with Marley, and she's there at home. She's at home economics class, and the pizzas have been delivered to the class. So usually they get delivered to homes, right? When you do the checklist of what you want. But because it was, you know, it was a class field trip, the pizzas got delivered to the class because they're going to cook their pizzas that they made at the factory. You know, just for fun. The problem is all Peyton could imagine was that her pizza was made with Marley. Okay? So her pizza was made with Marley's blood and her body parts and her organs when she fell into the tomato vat. Okay? She's been in the tomato vat and she thinks the tomato sauce on her pizza's blood and body parts, and she starts to freak out about it. You know, her guilt's getting to her brain and she's imagining things. However, you've got to remember, Peyton really believes that Marley fell into one of these tomato vats. So technically, the pizza that she's got could possibly have been made with Marley's body parts, okay? There's no indication that Marley's been found at this point, or she's fell and her body's been found next to the vat or something. She really thinks that Marley's was in that vat of tomato sauce. For some reason, guys, instead of just being like, oh, I'm not hungry, I don't want it, she eats the pizza. Whether to get rid of evidence or something, or to just get rid of the guilt and shame of what she's done, because she's literally looking at it. She doesn't decide to just throw it away and just say, I'm not hungry. She eats the pizza. She eats it all. She doesn't eat it quickly. She eats it slowly, and we get details of her, how she's eating the pizza very slowly, how the dough and stuff's like getting stuck and in her stomach and stuff when she's eating it. It's not very nice. It's pretty gruesome. And after she's ate it, her stomach is really bad. She's nauseous, feels extremely sick about what she's done. She's worried that because her stomach's so sick and off, it's literally because she's ate Marley. She's ate her best friend. And that's why her stomach's not happy with it, because she's literally ate a human. And at home, guys, she goes back home and she's really sick at this point, guys. She's really ill. And she tries to say, oh, it's nonsense. I haven't ate my friend. Something bad must have been wrong with the pizza. It wasn't my friend. I was just imagining things. And she changes her mind and thinks that she ate a parasite. Which, again, is really weird, but you've got to think Peyton's in shock and she's imagining everything and she's coming to conclusions very rapidly because her brain's not working. She's still in shock about what happened. And she's like, oh, I'll just take a parasite. I can get rid of it. And apparently there's a technique to get a parasite out of your body if you've ate something wrong, like one of those tapeworms or something. Is that, again, this is really weird, guys, but it's Fazbear Frights, so I didn't write it, okay? I'm just telling you how it is. Technique, you put a slab of meat in your mouth and you wait for the worm to go up your throat to eat the meat. Is that real? I don't even know if that's a real technique, but apparently you starve your stomach out, you don't eat for days, and then you put food in your mouth, and the parasite, because it's so hungry, will literally go out of your stomach, crawl up your throat, and eat the meat, and then you've got it. You got rid of the worm. I mean, I thought you could just take pills to kill worms, but it's Fazbear Frights, so this is what she does, guys. She goes downstairs, gets some meat. She goes into the bathroom, and she puts some meat in her mouth to try and get rid of the parasite. I wonder what's going to happen. She waited some more. Sickly saliva pooling in her mouth. She desperately wanted to spit the meat into the sink, but she knew it was her best chance at solving this problem on her own. And then she felt it. Something was moving in her stomach. It felt like it was uncoiling like a snake. She could feel the worm, if that's what it was, pushing itself out of her stomach and up her esophagus. But it was a different sensation than throwing up. The thing making its way up to her torso was solid and slow. And then she was choking, coughing and retching. She looked in the mirror. Her throat was visibly pulsing as the thing inside her moved up the length of her neck. The words "better out than in" popped into her head, but in this case, she couldn't be sure they were true. She didn't want the thing to stay inside her, but she was also afraid to see it. Her mouth popped open extra wide, like when the dentist pried it apart to fit in the tools. She looked at her gaping mouth in the mirror. She felt something wiggly against her palate. She leaned closer to the mirror to see better, then blinked and shook her head because she couldn't believe what she saw. Moving fingers with petal pink polish, Marley's colour, on the nails. The fingers were attached to a hand that she could see emerging from her stretched out throat. So basically, guys, Marley's dead hand was coming out of her body, going up her throat and out of her mouth. And she could see the nail polish on the nail, so it was definitely Marley. Oh, guys. And then we get some even more gruesome details. So, after that point, guys, she panics and stuff, and she opens the door to leave the bathroom. And then the hand apparently goes back into her stomach. Okay? It's all in her imagination. Okay? Peyton even looks in the mirror and just says, oh, it was all just my imagination. Absolutely fine. There was nothing to worry about. And this is where Peyton starts to get confused. Like, oh my God, is Marley alive? Is Marley alive in my stomach? What's going on? This can't be real, right? Marley can't be alive inside my stomach. That just doesn't make any sense. And she even says, like, oh, maybe it's just my imagination. Maybe the guilt of betraying Marley had destroyed her emotional health. Okay, so it already says in the book that Peyton is in so much shock and guilt that her brain's just hallucinating things. Because she's eating the pizza, she thinks she's ate Marley, and now her brain's making her think that Marley's coming out of her stomach and stuff, right? So she's like, okay, let's just relax. I'm going to brush my teeth and go to bed. She feels like she was getting better. You know, it's fine. She splashed her face with warm water and started to dry it off. As she rubbed the towel against her throat, she felt something jump inside her neck. She looked in the mirror. Lumps were rising beneath the skin of her throat, moving around and rearranging themselves. Her skin stretched and her veins bulged. No, Peyton thought, this isn't real. This isn't real. Because what I thought happened before wasn't real either. But the image in the mirror told a different story. Peyton put both hands on her throat to make sure what she was seeing wasn't an illusion. Some of the lumps were the size of grapes. Others were nearly the size of golf balls. They moved under her fingers when she pressed down on them, darting like they were trying to avoid her touch. These lumps in her throat, guys, start to go into her head and her face. Her eyes bulged. Something was pushing hard behind them. She had never felt such an intense pressure. Her eyes protruded out from her eyelids, opening so wide that she could see the orbs in their entirety. The whites, the dilated pupils, the bursting blood vessels. Pulpy red slop seeped, then spewed from her eye socket so forcefully that her eyeballs were propelled from her face like cannonballs blasting from a cannon. One hit the mirror with a wet slap, while the other ones landed with a splat in the basin of the sink. Pressed together into a soft, solid mass, the bits of flesh and tissue squeezed from Peyton's empty eye sockets like fresh sausage being extruded from a meat grinder. The slop fell to the floor in long tubes. She could see nothing, but she could feel the pressure in her head building even more as it became fuller and fuller until she feared it might explode. So yeah, guys, all these bumps and stuff in her brain, so much pressure that it actually explodes her head, basically, and her eyeballs pop out, and all that pressure gets seeped out of her eyeballs like sausage meat. Pretty gruesome, right, for a Fazbear Frights story. Now, do you think this really happened? It didn't, okay? She wakes up screaming in her bed. Okay, so all of that part was just a dream. Now, the writer, Peyton's dream of Freddy Fazbear, is in a different text, right? The whole segment of the mirror scene is not. So it makes the reader think it's not a dream, to try and trick the reader. Naughty, naughty. But it was a dream, guys. She wakes up and it was all a dream, okay? It was all just a dream. And now when she wakes up, she feels sick. She's going to be sick. All of these dreams and everything and what's happened where she's ate the pizza. She can't keep this pizza in her stomach anymore. She needs to throw up. She thinks about throwing up in the toilet and stuff, but she doesn't want this. She doesn't want Marley's remains basically to be in the bushes and stuff. So she actually runs outside and she throws up in the bush in a garden outside a house. You know, I threw up. What if I've just threw up Marley and Marley's remains are in the bushes outside? So she's still panicking and overthinking things. This is where the twist is, okay, guys? She goes back up to her room after she threw up and the doorbell rings and she doesn't know what to do because Peyton thinks that this is Marley coming to haunt her again. Okay, she's threw up Marley outside and the doorbell rings. So in her brain, she thinks that she's threw up Marley and Marley's come back and she's ringing the doorbell to try and get revenge on Peyton. So what Peyton decides to do to hide is to climb on the roof to get away because she can't escape anywhere else. She can't go to the door and see who it is, which I would just do because it might not be Marley. But Peyton's obviously, she's so deep now with hallucinations and guilt and shock. Very similar to 1:35 a.m. She's got no other options. So Peyton climbs on the roof to try and hide from Marley. The doorbell rings again. And yeah, Peyton just thinks it's Marley. And Peyton says it'll be okay while she's on the roof. I'll just sit on the roof till she's gone. Then I'll climb back through the window into my room. She flinched as she heard the doorbell ring again. So at this point, guys, Peyton's on the roof hiding from whoever's ringing the doorbell. Now, we switch characters, okay, guys? Marley's alive. Marley is alive. And Marley is ringing the doorbell, okay? But not the way you think. Marley stood on the porch, waiting for the door to open. Being missing had been kind of fun. No school, no responsibilities, but hiding out in the pizza factory had started to get old. She missed her boyfriend, missed regular meals, and missed sleeping in her own bed. She had gone to see her boyfriend first, and now she was going to let Peyton know she was okay. Those visits were the first two phases of becoming unmissing. Then she would go back home for the required tearful reunion with her parents. So guys, Marley was alive and nothing happened, okay? She was just hiding out in the factory because she thought it was fun to be missing for a few days. She thought it was a fun prank, a joke. Thunk! The sound came from the other side of the house. Marley ran down the porch steps to investigate. It was dark around the back of the house, so it took Marley a moment to make sense of the shape lying on the ground. But then she saw it was a girl about her size. Her neck was twisted and her head was tilted at a painful looking angle. Peyton's eyes, wide open in a frozen look of terror, seemed to be looking right at Marley. But Marley knew Peyton wasn't looking at her and would never look at anything again. Marley screamed. The end. Marley, alive and well, it was just a prank, haha. Rings a doorbell to be like, Peyton, I'm fine, don't worry about it. And then Peyton slips from the roof. Peyton slips from the roof and breaks her neck and she dies. And Marley finds a body the other side of the house. So all of what happened to Peyton, all of Peyton's hallucinations, Peyton believing that she's eating Marley, Peyton looking in the mirror and seeing Marley's hand come out of her throat, it was all just hallucinations and it was all in her own head, okay? The shock and the guilt and the lying was too much for Peyton to handle, and it screwed her brain up and it made her hallucinate that Marley was dead and that she ate her and Marley was coming back for revenge, okay, like a ghost, like a zombie, like a pizza zombie, when in fact none of that happened. And Marley did come and say hello to Peyton to say that she was fine, but it was too late. Peyton slips from the roof and dies. So there you go. I've heard from some people that they did not like the ending, that it was a bit of a twist. I actually thought it was pretty good. It could have worked both ways, right? We could have had the ending where Marley did die and Peyton did eat Marley, and then Marley does come back as a pizza zombie and comes out of her body and tries to kill Peyton. That would work too. And that's usually how a Fazbear Fright story goes. That's how it would, like Breaking Wheel, right? That's usually how it goes. But the writer decided not to do it that way for this one and make it a twist where actually Marley didn't die at all. She was just pulling a prank and just having fun. And everything that happened was all inside Peyton's head with guilt, okay? And ironically, none of this would have happened if Peyton just told the truth about what happened. None of it would have happened. So there you go. If Peyton just said to the policeman, yeah, I saw a fall on the balcony in the tomato vat room, they would have went into the vat room and found Marley hiding. And then there you go. But it's just a Fazbear Fright story, so obviously that doesn't happen. That was Pizza Kit, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Again, the only thing that you can talk about in this story is just hallucinations, okay? Hallucinations, mind games play a big part in Five Nights at Freddy's. They always have in FNAF 1 with the hallucinations, FNAF 3 with the phantoms. Hallucinations have always played a big part in Five Nights at Freddy's, even with some of the old Fazbear Fright stories too. 1:35 AM is the biggest one. Hallucinations play a big part in Fazbear Frights and the FNAF storyline altogether. So, there you go. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Like I said, there was a lot of filler in this, but it's not a bad story. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I thought it was a good story, but yeah. And I actually kind of admire the fact that the writer made it differently compared to the other stories. Instead of it just being like, oh, zombie Marley comes out and kills Peyton, they actually do it where it's just a twist where Marley is still alive and then Peyton dies and falls off the house. So there you go. Okay, guys, now onto the epilogue. Okay, now the epilogue is pretty crazy at this point. Okay, so if you remember last episode with the epilogue, Stitch Wraith saves a girl from some drug dealers and he takes her into a shed, and in this shed they hear crawling outside the shed like a robotic, and we kind of said that that's probably Eleanor, because she was kind of near the factory anyway. Because if you remember, Eleanor is attached to Afton, the Afton big rabbit mech with all of the things combined, and she detaches herself from it and runs away. So she's still alive. Afton's dead, but she's still alive, the animatronic of her. And we know it's Eleanor because it's baby animatronic, but with a long neck and stuff like that. And the only one we know of that is Eleanor. Detective Larson, as well, remember, goes to the ball pit, the original ball pit of Into the Pit, and he takes some samples, remember. He takes some samples of the ball pit to get investigated, okay? And in this story, this epilogue, he gets the results. And it's pretty crazy, and it's pretty weird. Larson sends 30 samples of the ball pit to the labs, and he gets the results back. The samples indicate that it's blood, okay? And all of the samples of the blood were from the same person, right? The same person's blood from the ball pit. However, every single blood sample was from different time periods. So blood sample 1, 1985. Blood sample 2, 2001. Blood sample 3, 2002. Does that make sense? So all of the blood samples that were taken were not from the same time. Some were older and some were more recent. All of the blood in the pit contained blood from the same person. It doesn't say who, but from different time periods, okay? We don't know who the blood is from, but if it's from the same person and the pit's haunted with the original murders, remember? When Oswald, I think he's called Oswald, goes into the pit and it's like, it brings back the memories of the original murders. Spring Bonnie, the missing kids incident, right? Where the kids get murdered by William Afton and then he comes back and then Spring Bonnie comes out and attacks him. That's the same ball pit. If the ball pit is showing a memory of the murders by William Afton, it kind of indicates that the blood is from William Afton, okay? If it's from the same person, but we'll have to wait and see. It's not 100% confirmed yet, I don't think so. And he even rings up the lab just to ask about this, and the lab insists, like, yeah, this is 100% true. The blood samples are all accurate. It's the same blood from a person, but from different time periods. Larson needs to investigate this, but he also wants to learn more about Stitch Wraith as well. What's the deal with Stitch Wraith? And then it cuts off. And then we go back to Stitch Wraith, Jake. Jake goes out looking for food and blankets and supplies to look after the girl that he saved from the drug dealers, right? And it starts off with Jake returning to the shelter, okay, where the girl is. The girl is now awake, okay? The girl is now awake. And we get introduced to her. And Jake asks what her name is. And she says her name is Renelle. Okay? And this is where things get weird. And Jake believes that the name sounds wrong. Like, it's like she's not telling the truth fully. And her name was half true. It even says that her name is half true. Renelle. Renelle. Okay? Jake finds some food. And strangely, Renelle looks so much better today when she was woken up. Her eyes were bright and she had colour in her cheeks. That was a quick recovery. I'll read the last part of this, guys. So I think you get the idea what's happened, right? But the last part indicates it completely what's happened here. So just have a conversation. Renelle asks Jake what happened. How am I here? And Jake explains that, you know, he saved her from the drug dealers. He watched her eat. He wanted to ask her questions, but he wasn't sure if it was polite. Renelle finished the peaches and licked her fingers. She looked at Jake. You're wondering why I'm a druggie? Jake shook his head, but she was right. He did wonder. Renelle crossed her legs and hugged herself. My mom died when I was 13. Jake sat down next to Renelle. He thought about touching her hand, but he wasn't sure he should. I'm sorry, he said. I know what that's like. My mom died too. It's awful. Renelle touched Jake's cloak. I'm sorry too. Yes, it is. Her gaze drifted off past Jake's shoulder. That was just 2 years ago, but it feels like forever. I was really close to my mom, and when she died, I was a mess and no one was there for me. What about your dad? Jake asked. Renelle shook her head. He was all wrapped up in his own grief and he couldn't deal, you know? He disappeared into his work, got obsessed about it. He couldn't help me, she sighed. I tried to cope, I really did, but I finally couldn't stand the pain anymore. Renelle smiled at him. You're really nice. My dad didn't understand at all. He hauled me off to one of those schools for kids who'd get in trouble, and he left me there. When I got out, he was still wrapped up in his work. I stole some of his money, and when he found out I'd done that, he kicked me out, told me not to come back. I'm so sorry. Renelle shrugged and reached for another can. This one, a small tin of deviled ham. She opened it and scooped out some of the salty-smelling pink meat. She chewed, swallowed, and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Renelle concentrated on eating, but her eyes were shiny with tears. Jake could tell she loved her dad and missed him. He could intensely feel her loss. Watching Renelle polish off the deviled ham, Jake decided he was going to find Renelle's father and get them reunited. He didn't know how, but he was going to figure it out. The moment Jake made his decision, the sun won its battle with the clouds. A ray of golden light shot in through the shed's smudged window and landed on Renelle. The light made Renelle look like a sweet angel, and it revealed something Jake had not noticed before. Renelle was wearing a very unusual pendant. Hanging from a silver chain, the pendant was a somewhat misshapen silver heart. The puffy shape reminded Jake of things he had seen in comic strips. This heart was the kind of heart he had expected to see a cartoon character to wear. The way the sun hit the silver made it glint and flash sparkles. The sparkles made Jake smile. He thought it was a sign that something good was going to happen. And there you go, guys. That is the epilogue. And what do you think, guys? Where have you seen this silver pendant before? Where have you seen it? To Be Beautiful. Eleanor's pendant from To Be Beautiful. Okay? And we know To Be Beautiful is, and we know the silver pendant is a illusion disc. Okay? It's an illusion disc. Eleanor uses the pendant to turn into, I forgot her name. Sarah? Let's just say Sarah for now. I can't remember. So if you remember, the main character in To Be Beautiful uses the pendant, wears the pendant to look nice and pretty. It's an illusion disc, okay? And when she takes the illusion disc off, she's just a scrap of metal and stuff, because her whole body's just been ripped apart and shoved in body bags, and the disc is there. The illusion necklace is making her look beautiful. And then Eleanor then uses the illusion disc to turn into Sarah herself and then run away, okay? And the original girl, Sarah, is dead. Now, Eleanor is back, and it looks like she's using the illusion disc, pretending to be the girl that Jake saved by the looks of things. Eleanor came into the shed, got rid of the original girl who Jake saved, put on the illusion disc, pretended to be the girl. Okay, that's how I feel. That's how it plays out. So when Jake goes to get supplies, Eleanor creeps in, gets rid of the original girl, puts on the illusion disc, and takes a place. Okay, that's how I think is what happened. And the weird thing is that Renelle talks about how her mom died when she was 13, and that her dad was doing things with overworking with stuff like that, and that's how she became, you know, addicted to drugs and stuff and got into trouble. It's a hard one. It's either that Eleanor is just pretending that, or it does link with Eleanor, that her mom did die when she was 13 and her dad was William Afton. I don't know. Or whether she knows what happened to, let's call her Renee, because it's Renelle. Renee. Let's call the original girl who Jake saved Renee, okay? And Renee, that story that Eleanor talks about did happen to Renee, and she knows about it, and she's just lying and manipulating Jake. And Jake says, very scarily, that he's going to go and get her reunited with her father. So I have no idea what's going to happen next. I really don't. Whether we're going to see Afton again, whether we're going to see Renee's dad instead, or something like that. Maybe Renee's dad's interesting. We'll have to wait and see. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Leave a like if you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the summary. Another long one, but you're used to it by now. That was Pizza Kit. The next book will be on its way very soon, and it's called Friendly Face. Yes, it's the cat one. It's the cat one, guys. So that's going to be interesting to read. And obviously the epilogue as well. What's going to happen with Stitch, Rafe and Eleanor. We'll have to wait and see. Take care. Thanks for watching. Lots of love. And I'll see you all next time.